This is Kurt Greenway with Henry Schein. Today we're with Mark Andreese from Empower HR. The owner of today's dental practice is no longer a sole proprietor. Now the dentists are CEO of a $1 million, in many cases a multi-million-dollar corporation. One of the great things about working with Henry Schein is they recognize that and they bring proprietary solutions to market to help dentists make that transition. Mark, if you would, tell us a little bit about who and what Empower HR is.
Basically what we do is give that dental practice that same look and feel as a Fortune 50 company. Many times dental practices have been doing things a certain way for a long time. They bought the practice from somebody and they've continued on. But it's not something that they've ever looked at of what they need to do from the HR perspective. Most dental practices, if they stop and think a minute, they have four types of capital. They have, obviously the largest capital they have is their practice itself. Lots of equipment, lots of things that are being purchased for a dental practice that many small businesses doesn't possess. They also have the capital of cash in the bank. That's typically what most people think of when they think of capital. But there's two others that people rarely think of. The first is the intellectual capital. The time and the brain power that the dentist put in going to school and becoming an expert in their craft. But the part that's typically forgotten by most businesses, specifically on the dental side, is the human capital. Human capital is the only capital that gets up every night and leaves. And you hope it comes back the next day because you don't have anything if your employees aren't coming back.
Right.
And what keeps them coming back? Well, the family atmosphere that dental practice try to provide, the business perspective that they know they're professional, they know that they're doing things in the right way. But many times the dentists themselves have never been trained at what they need to do to follow the guidelines that are out there for small business to be able to make sure they're doing things the right way compliantly. So a big issue with dental practices and most all small business is how do I hire employees? How do I fire employees? How do I do these things correctly without running afoul of all the rules and regs that the government has in place? So what we're able to do is step in from that human capital side and provide a complete Fortune 50 benefit plan, a Fortune 50 HR department, a Fortune 50 style operation that a small business could never afford to do on their own.
What are some of the ways that Empower HR would impact the hiring process?
Well, from a hiring standpoint, when you hire your first employee, your whole life changes. So the dentist already has employees in place. But what we're able to do is, if there is turnover issues, is how do they need to go about hiring? Well, the first thing you need to do is make sure you have an employee handbook and a job description that are compliant and up to date. And if you don't, you put yourself in tremendous liabilities of potentially doing things the wrong way. The other thing is, if they don't have the job descriptions in place, is how are they to know, their current employees, to know that they're doing the right things, the things that are part of their job. But probably the biggest issue that most every business has, and specifically the dental practice side, is that they're not sure what they can and can't say in an interview, and they just have it as a conversation. Well, the problem is, if you've never been trained, and training is key there, and continuing training, is that you start asking the wrong questions purely by accident. Not doing anything to be overt and break the law, but you just don't know. And when it comes to compliance in any form, what you don't know will hurt you. So conversations arise where they ask, do you have a car? Well, that's actually illegal. You can't ask somebody if they have a car. You can ask them, do you have the ability to get to work on Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or whatever it is, and it doesn't matter to you whether they take a cab or a bus or have their own car, as long as they're able to get there, that's all you can actually ask. You can't ask about their children. You can't ask if they have children. You can't ask, any question that you would typically think of as being fairly personal, you're not allowed to ask. So part of our hiring is we make sure we train the employees, we make sure we train the dentist what you can and can't say. Secondly is, when you make a decision of this is the person I want to hire, you need to do background checks and drug screening.
You'll do that?
We do all of that. The key is to make sure you know everything about them, and it's part of the due diligence process. You wouldn't buy a practice without doing full due diligence on it. The same thing, you shouldn't hire an employee without doing full due diligence on them. They may have had a background of assault, and they come in, you hire them, they come in, they assault one of your employees, you're now liable for that. And the answer from a court standpoint is you should have known. Had you exercised proper due diligence, you'd have never hired that person if you found out they have a background of assaulting other co-workers or anybody else. So it's all part of that process of making sure you're doing correct due diligence. We handle all of those aspects for you. When you have to let somebody go, you want to make sure you've done it the right way. You want to make sure you've documented and made sure that if you're letting them go, it's justified. You've tried to work with that employee. You tried to make things better to keep that employee, but at a certain point, you've got to let them go. Well, another liability for a dental practice is if you don't let them go correctly, not only can you be sued by them because nobody's ever been fired for their own fault, they always have to find somebody else's fault, and they typically say, well, I didn't do anything wrong, I'm going to sue my past employer. But also, if they're not eligible for unemployment because you let them go with cause, well, what do? How do you fight those unemployment claims? Part of what we also offer for our clients is the ability to have us fight their unemployment claims. We help them let the employee go compliantly. We help put together the plan of separation notices, and then also, if indeed you had to let them go with cause, we fight those unemployment claims because we've got those experts in those areas. So there's a lot of compliance areas that most businesses, and specifically dental practices, never think about. They don't think about what they can and can't do in these areas.
So that's truly a situation where the doctor could be in the right, but if they don't handle it correctly, they could be the one paying the price.
We help keep you compliant. We help do the employee handbooks and job descriptions. We help you if you have to let people go. We help you when you're hiring those folks. And really from the day you hire them to the day you have to fire them, God forbid, we're there to work with you all in between as well.
That brings up a great question, because many of the practices I call on either are offering a 401k or would like to as an option. Can you talk about how you impact a 401k and kind of the economics of a 401k plan?
Sure. With our plan, a 401k is included. So everything we do includes that 401k. So right now, the companies that do have a 401k place today, they're required to do what's called 5,500 testing each year. It's discrimination testing.
Okay.
And what that does is it looks at all the employees, whether they're participating or not, of the lowest employee pay-wise to the highest employee pay-wise. And then what that test does is determines what the maximum amount you can put in. So what happens, though, typically is in the case of a dental practice, a smaller group, so they have less of a group to look across. And what it does is it precludes the dentist from being able to put in as much as he could possibly put in. Not only that, but the testing is very expensive. The testing runs anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 a year, every year, and that's just the testing.
And each practice has to do that offers 401k?
Any 401k has to do that each year.
Okay.
So what we're able to do is we're able to offer our 401k in. There's no cost as part of our program. It includes the testing each year, so the dental practice doesn't have to do that. Also, because of our large group, we have a much higher average payroll than a typical dental practice would. So that allows the dentist to put even more money in than he'd otherwise be able to. And last but not least item is that it not only saves them, but for that practice that doesn't today have one in place. Many times you and I've walked in practices where they say, would like to have one, but it's just expensive.
Right.
They're looking at that testing. They're looking at putting everything into place, and it costs many thousands of dollars, not only initially, but annually. With us, it's in there. So they don't have those initial costs from a setup. They don't have the cost from a testing standpoint, and they don't have the ongoing headaches of having to become not only all this, but they become the administrator of the plan, and now there's liabilities. So we basically wash all those things off of their plate, roll them onto ours, and because we're doing it for so many people, the cost-effective nature takes over big time.
Right, and the cost to replace an employee in dentistry is higher than any other industry. So once you've taken the time and the effort as the CEO of a practice to train an employee to be an extension of your vision, now we have these things in place to keep them there long term.
Exactly. We all know what happens with happier employees.
Absolutely.
And that's really where the Shine practice is able to step in and show additional benefits of happy employees and being able to do the things that help that practice grow and continue to thrive.
So another solution that just helps the doctor build a better business.
Indeed. Very much so.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Kurt.